those the president is using as negotiators may be surprised, but those who have been working in the region for decades following Iran specifically, those are not the people who are part of the president's negotiating team. And the United States is paying as a result.
Gina, let's start with the very latest, which is that the US military says it's launched heavy strikes against Iran. They say it's in retaliation that they've hit dozens of targets in Iran. How do you analyse this latest chapter and this latest escalation?
Well, it's like yesterday is today and probably tomorrow as well. The Iranians assess that this was an informal ceasefire. We have proved ourselves willing more than once to start bombing even as negotiations are going on. So I think the Iranians didn't trust that we were not going to strike at will, and every reason to believe that. The ceasefire helped the president. It helped President Trump. You saw that gas prices started coming down again just with the few days that the mutual strikes had stopped. That does not help the Iranians put pressure on the United States, put pressure on President Trump. And so I believe they were willing to take the pain, as they've shown repeatedly since last February, that this conflict with the United States, they believe they can win by their definition of what winning is, which is not necessarily military winning, but certainly the pressure is heavy on President Trump and the United States at this time.
Yeah, the pressure is heavy. I wonder what regional allies will make of this, because some of the reporting suggests that Saudi Arabia is particularly keen for the situation to de-escalate at this time. This clearly is the exact opposite of that. Is there a risk that Donald Trump is alienating allies in the region?
Well, it might. I mean, the Saudis are likely already not pleased with the bait and switch that was done with the nuclear deal. So they are absolutely not happy with the way that this has gone since the initial strikes. None of our Gulf partners are. Some of them were more accepting of the effort to tame Iran, but many of them were not. And those who were supportive expected us to make good on what we said, which is that it would be a very limited conflict and that we had the wherewithal to make the changes needed to make the Gulf a more stable place. We have failed to do that. And the consistent return to military strikes seems unlikely to change the Iranians' calculus or the situation in the Strait.
Mm. You mentioned a moment ago this idea that Iran is willing to take the pain, that they are proving, I suppose, to be a far more stubborn adversary than perhaps even President Trump had calculated. Would you say the US will have been surprised by the stubbornness of Iran?
I would say that those the president is using as negotiators may be surprised, but those who have been working in the region for decades following Iran specifically, those are not the people who are part of the president's negotiating team. And the United States is paying as a result. The State Department is largely out of the loop. Those who, my former colleagues who are experts in the region, who have a good understanding, who could have said, listen, Iran is not Venezuela. These are not people who are being listened to or brought in. So, yes, perhaps the president was surprised. But look at where we are now. 13 countries in the region have been bombed by Iran, by Israel, or by the United States. 2 countries have been bombed by all 3. This is a situation that is not being improved by the way currently the president is managing the issue.
I think the breadth of the battlefield that you've just outlined there, Gina, is fascinating. And I wonder how you now narrow the battlefield. Is that the next consideration? I'm not sure I'm trying to I'm trying to understand what that breadth represents by way of, I suppose, even justification of this conflict continuing.
Well, the breath certainly does not justify continuing the conflict, but it does suggest that the conflict could be even wider. We've got the Saudis asking countries, I understand about 50 have been invited to join a coalition to keep the Red Sea open. We certainly still have the United States wanting the Europeans, particularly the UK, France, others who might join, to patrol the Strait of Hormuz. There are proposals out there to have escorts take ships through Omani uh, territorial waters, which of course will absolutely get a response from Iran. But the world, the global economy is suffering right now with the increased price of oil, with the cessation of commodities going through that strait. It is very easy to see how this could become even more wide.
Mm. And just as a final thought, I read one piece of analysis. I wonder if you agree with it, that the Trump administration's current struggles in this current chapter with Iran are at least partly the result of the US success at the start of the war, and that is to kill Iran's supreme leader, only to have him replaced quite quickly, actually, by his son, who has been a far more sort of hardline leader who doesn't share the same caution. And I suppose the wider regime doesn't share the same caution at what may have become customary for Iran, i.e., to strike back in such a way as to save face without escalating. That caution seems to have been thrown to the wind.
Yeah, I'd say that was true and something the president has admitted publicly when he said, maybe we killed too many of the old leadership. There's no one to talk with. You know, he has complained several times that it wasn't clear who we were negotiating with or who had the ability to bring a deal or sign off on a deal. So, absolutely short sighted. And again, those who know the region would have advised that this is likely the situation where we find ourselves now. The way forward, of course, is to really stick with diplomacy, and there were going to be some compromises. As we saw with the MOU, it was very generous to the Iranians, which of course made the president back off of it because he got so much criticism. He couldn't stick to it. He couldn't stick to it.